Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of React Roundup. We have a special panelist episode for you today. So I am TJ Van Tol. I'll be acting as our host, and along with me I have Jack Harrington.
Hello.
And Paige Niedringhaus.
Hey everybody.
All right, so as a topic today, we were going to discuss how to stand out. How to stand out in a crowd, how to stand out as a software developer, how to get your name out there. Really anything under that sort of umbrella, because we know it's a common thing we get asked about a lot. All of us here have done that to varying levels of success, right? Like it's always debatable, but we've at least had some minor successes we can celebrate and talk about. So maybe we could just start with the basics, right? Like, I guess who wants to kick us off? Like, what are some tips we have from people that you have a software job, maybe you've been doing it for a while, but you want to get ahead for whatever reason, money, prestige, whatever. What's a good place for people to start?
Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and lately I've been working on actually building out Top End Devs. If you're interested, you can go to topenddevs.com/podcast, and you can actually hear a little bit more about my story, about why I'm doing what I'm doing with Top End Devs, why I changed it from devchat.tv to Top End Devs. But what I really want to get into is that I have decided that I'm going to build the platform that I always wished I had with devchat.tv, and I renamed it to Top End Devs because I want to give you the resources that are going to help you to build the career that you want, right? So whether you want to be an influencer in tech, whether you want to go and just max out your salary and then go live a lifestyle with your family, your friends, or just traveling the world or whatever, I want to give you the resources that are going to help you do that. We're going to have career and leadership resources in there, and we're going to be giving you content on a regular basis to help you level up and max out your career. So go check it out at topenddevs.com. If you sign up before my birthday, that's December 14th. If you sign up before my birthday, you can get 50% off the lifetime of your subscription. Once again, that's topenddevs.com.
I guess one thing to say would be, why are we doing this episode? Because typically as a developer, you think a lot about how to write good code, how to be a good teammate, more of the skills that you use every day in your job. But you might not think as much about, how do I stand out from my peers? How do I get promoted? How do I get offered a new job at a different company that I really want to work for? So these are the kind of things that developers who are going to stand out would typically do. And a lot of times it is going to be outside of your day-to-day job. You're going to be maybe doing something on the weekend or doing something after work. And it doesn't necessarily have to feel like a lot of extra work or a lot of extra effort, but it is going to be something that helps set you apart from the rest of your coworkers who come in, do their job, go home, and turn off the computer, I guess is the best way to put it. But like you can gather from all of us, I mean, the fact that we're hosting this podcast is one of the indicators that we're doing something a little bit different, because there are plenty of good developers, probably many who are better than all of us combined, who could be hosting this podcast, but are not. And the reason that that is the case is because we have all done something that kind of put our names out there and made us more visible to the people who run this podcast, employers, people who write the technical articles for magazines like Smashing Magazine and the weekly newsletters that you see coming across. So it really maybe is not something that you absolutely need to do if you want to go forward in your career and progress and get better, but it helps a whole heck of a lot to, I guess, have things that you can point to that you've done outside of your required duties or job to help make that case easier for you to show a potential employer or even your manager. You know, I'm not just here doing my day to day. I'm also doing a lot of other interesting things on the side.
I definitely agree. I think if you have a GitHub out there, at the very least, coming at it from the hiring manager perspective is where I'm coming at it from. Like, if I'm looking at somebody's resume, the way that it stands out to me is if they've got code sandbox links that I can click on, like right there, and go and I can see your code and play with it and be like, oh wow, that's actually pretty cool. That's neat, And it doesn't need to be anything crazy. You go and you solve some interesting asynchronous problem at work, or you do some cool like animation, just pull all the businessy stuff out of it, as long as it's not like IP to the company, which probably not, and then put that up on Code Sandbox. And now you got something you can put on the resume. Hey, take a look at this. And that's going to make your resume pop right there. That and a good GitHub page, that's fine. But I will say one thing before we jump, it's okay, by the way, to like be exhausted after a day at work and curl up with a glass of wine and I did that last night. I'm like, I'm done with the thing today. I'm done. So don't, sometimes you're in the mood to like go put up with Code Sandbox and sometimes not. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think I like focusing on the why first, because this isn't necessarily something for like, you really should have a reason you want to do this, because there's many different ways you can live your life. And if you're totally happy doing your 9-to-5 job, then the more power to you, right? Like, because Paige mentioned too, that this is likely outside of your normal work hours. I'd say it's almost certainly outside your normal work hours, unless you're extremely fortunate and you have some sort of position where you can put things out there in the public. I think that is the minority by far. And I could say, like, from my own personal experiences, I got started on doing my 9-to-5 job and then doing some things outside of work hours to try to sort of get my name out there and get ahead. So I think you want to have some reason you're doing that, right? Because it does take time. So in my case, I did stuff I thought was fun or that I was motivated to do. So it didn't feel like I was working an 8-hour day and then coming home and working 2 or 3 more hours. I was doing things that I wanted to do. So it felt like fun rather than work, which is probably a good place to start if you're sort of saying like, well, what can I do? Well, do something you want to do or something you're interested in. Maybe some side project you want to build around your house. Those sorts of things can be great opportunities to sort of get started down this path.
Yeah, IoT, you can do all kinds of fun stuff in your house. Little plug for Blues Wireless there. You want to automate your dishwasher or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a great one. And to kind of piggyback off of that, figure out what medium you like being in. So for me, the first thing that I started doing in addition to working was writing, because I like to write already. I feel like I'm a pretty decent writer. So I just opened up a Medium account and started writing about things that I had learned at work, things that I had learned in side projects, things that were tricky, but I had figured out a way around it. So, it might not be a massive tutorial. It might just be something really specific, like how do you have a card that's clickable and then a button inside that card that's clickable. It could be really, really specific, but I can almost guarantee you that somebody else has run into that same problem and looked for a way to fix it. So putting out these little specific solutions are all going to be probably as useful to a few particular people as putting out some really large. I built a full e-commerce site just for the heck of it, using all these, new technologies and frameworks and stuff. So just figure out, what do I like to already do? Do I really like to make videos? Do I like to write? What could you do that you already kind of enjoy and could make that a thing that you do regularly, whether it's once a month or once every couple weeks or whatever? Try to find that thing that you won't dread doing if you're going to do this, so that you don't do 3 of them and then burn out and say, I hate this, I don't want to do anymore. And
I'd say if you're the kind of person that takes notes as you are rolling along, you got your markdown file or whatever, you're like, I need to set up an Apollo server, blah, 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 right? And you're kind of like, I need to remember this for next time, right? So you write down in a markdown, you write, first you install this package, then you install that package, and yada, yada. That markdown, that's literally a Dev 2 article. I mean, you add a little bit of exposition, maybe a few images, and you've got a Dev 2 article right there. And you can just literally just make a Dev 2 account, pop it on there, and then somebody can do a Google search, and they're like, that's a nice recipe for pulling up an Apollo GraphQL server. Done. Thank you so much. And now you've got your name out there, and it's so easy.
Yeah. And with writing in particular, I would encourage people, if you think you're not a good writer, don't let that be a big stopping point. Like, obviously, if you have writing experience, if you've studied it in school and stuff, that stuff will help. It'll help you build a more compelling blog post. But you have to think about how developers in general read blog posts, because most of us, when we are on blog posts, we're reading it in like turbo mode, right? Like, we're just skimming, looking for the answer. We're not looking for world-class prose. I'm not sitting down with a glass of wine, crossing my legs, and like reading the next Kelsey Dodds masterpiece. It's like, no, I'm loading the page. I'm scrolling instantly to the code snippets to see if it's relevant to me and if there's something I can copy and paste. Maybe I read a few sentences for context if you're lucky. Most of the time. I'm not saying there's no place for like really well-written stuff, because that stuff does matter. But I'm just saying, if you think it's going to be a barrier that you can't really construct an amazing prose as part of your writing, don't worry too much about that.
Seconded and thirded. I remember I was writing for one company, and they were, I had this article, and it was very popular on like setting up a chat server, but you had to initialize the database first, right? So it was like, here's the code that's going to hit the database server, and it had to be initialized first. And the initialization code was the block above it. And I would get like, every question I would get was like, this doesn't work. Like, have you run the initialization? And it was basically just people would just like copy and paste. They'd scroll through the article. Oh, look, code, boom, done. And they didn't care. So yeah, exactly. Don't worry about like being, I don't know, E. Cummings or whoever your favorite, J.R.R. Tolkien, if you're that way inclined. Don't worry about it. Write the code. And that's all people care about anyway.
The most popular, I've worked as a DevRel for almost a decade at this point. So I've had a lot of stuff that I've put out into the world. And my most popular thing I've ever created was a 2-sentence Stack Overflow answer, where all I did was describe the problem and link to a Chrome bug about it. And that thing, like, I've got so much Stack Overflow, like reputation points and everything. And it took me like, it took me like 5 minutes after, because I had found the Stack Overflow thread by looking into the problem, and I made the connection between that and a Chrome bug. I just like wired the two together for people, and like just watch the reputation points come in. Like, it's just been the gift that keeps giving. Yeah. So sometimes it can be something simple like that.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is it doesn't have to be extra complicated at all. It could be really simple. It could be something that you think is obvious, but you're going to blow somebody's mind when you share it or when you link it or whatever. And it's definitely worth putting out there, even though it seems like to you it just makes sense, or it's just common knowledge.
So I do have one question. So if people are interested in writing, and Paige, I'll probably throw this to you first, because you've recently, I know, experimented with a bunch of different just blog offerings, like different platforms. Do you recommend people to start on like some existing platform, like a Dev.to, or to like spin up their own stuff? I guess I think it's sort of an interesting conversation, because I know lots of people don't know where to go or where to start. So curious your thoughts on that.
I would say that, start on some existing platform, whether it's Dev.to, whether it's Medium, whether it's Substack, whether it's something else that eliminates the friction from you actually writing something. Because I know so many developers fall into the trap of, I've got to build my own blogging site, on my website, or I need to set up a website so that I can write blogs. And that's just going to take you forever, and you probably are going to, stop building it before you even get to the posting section. So I would absolutely say start somewhere else that you don't have to build the infrastructure and build everything and make it look good and make it mobile responsive and do this and do that and the other. Just start somewhere. Hashnode, one of these options that exists. And then if you keep going and you decide at some point, I'd really like to have my own site where everything is in one place, whether because you write for different, technical companies, or you write on different platforms for different things. Maybe your company has a blog, whatever. Then go ahead and include canonical URLs, bring some content over there, and then link to it for the original source or something like that. But yeah, just make it as easy as possible to get started. Just choose something that's already up and running and maybe has a good readership to kind of help start the SEO process and make your name more known online. And then once you've gotten into a groove or you've found your voice or you feel like you have a good body of work that you would like to show off in some consolidated form, then maybe you do your own website or your own platform or a blog page or, something like that. But I would absolutely say start easier and then get more complicated and go from there.
Yeah, a lot of those sites like Dev2, it's like you put up an article and they're looking for content and they're looking to promote content off the main page, and they've got all these vehicles to get people, to get it out there for you. If you don't have a huge Twitter following or a huge LinkedIn following, honestly, that's another thing. Like LinkedIn, yes, it's boring, but it's a good place to be if you want a job.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You use that to your advantage, right? If you put out a blog page on your own domain, like you're gonna have to do all the work, connect, get in Google, to even look at it. It's a pain. Ugh.
Well, and that actually, Jack, that's a great point. Don't neglect your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one, make one, please. And don't have something as your most recent update when you were a junior developer 5 years ago and you have not updated it since then. Because I know developers like this who have not done anything on LinkedIn for 10 years and they don't care because they're employed. People know who they are. They have some sort of a reputation. But if you're trying to look like a good candidate for particular jobs, or you want to attract more recruiters to just reach out to you, or you even just want to seem like a legitimate person who knows their stuff and is keeping their skills up to date and things like that, just take a little time every 6 months or a year and review your profile if you haven't and add some new stuff to it. Because I'm sure you've done something in the past year. Just put a couple bullet points down with new technologies you're working with or things that you've built that were cool that you could link to from there. Please just do something.
Right, I feel like you're speaking to me personally because you don't want to look at what my LinkedIn profile looks like. There's cobwebs. There's
what the heck?
Yeah,
I know.
Well, the thing is too. So one advantage of doing so much in public is you can control a bit more what happens when people Google you. So like people won't find my LinkedIn profile if they Google me because I have stuff like a website and other things that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, so the one tip that I wanted to bring up along when we were talking build your own blog versus post elsewhere, one tip that you can do that I now do quite a bit is you can create your own website, just like a very basic landing page, and just link to your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like it can just be a link dump. And if you're writing elsewhere, someplace that's easier, just toss a link. Like here's a link to my Dev2 profile where all my blog articles are. Here's a link to my GitHub. Because that gives you just a logical place that you can send people for, like, if you're asked in a resume, you can say, okay, I can throw a website together. This lists out all my information. And it can be a nice sort of compromise between building your own blogging infrastructure and maintaining it.
Yeah.
But also just having a presence, a logical place for people that look you up to go to.
Yeah, you just got to lay down a bunch of links, right? So you do your Apollo GraphQL server setup, you get it deployed to a Lambda or whatever interesting thing you figured out. And you've taken that markdown, you put it up on Dev2, put a link on LinkedIn. Hey, I did this thing, I did whatever. Link to Dev2, done, right? Copy and paste, go over to Twitter, do the same thing, bang, right? There you go. Now you're on tech Twitter, right? Now you're a person who's like posting on tech Twitter. I know I've followed so many folks that like they post everything but tech on tech Twitter, and you're like, I love to just listen to folks who are like, here's something cool I figured out, and then on your own site if you've got one, and then that's how you get that name recognition rolling, and it's not that hard. Like writing a link to your article that's got some spicy little text on there, like, "Hey, you stuck with this? I've got the solution for you." It's pretty easy, and make it actionable, right? That's one thing for sure. Like, actually, a lot of this is underpinned with some things that you're going to learn as you get out there, and one of them is empathy, and to try and make sure that you're writing for the reader and not necessarily writing for yourself. It's cool to like, hey, I did this and puff yourself up. But it's very, very important to like think about like, what are they trying to accomplish? Like, oh, they're trying to get AWS deployed to, or GraphQL deployed to an AWS Lambda, here's my 3 code blocks separated by some scroll that nobody's going to read, and that's what they need. And then, just make sure that you got that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing that you might try to do, depending on who you work for and what kind of time you have, is you might try and make some of these things that you're doing, whether it's putting together some sort of a little talk at work or it's putting together a blog post or things like that, try and tie it back to your work when you can. Like internally, you might be able to give like lunchtime talks or tech talks or something like that. So, it's something that you figured out on your team or that your team as a whole kind of figured out and you want to share it with the wider engineering organization. You can absolutely probably convince your manager to give you a few hours to put together some sort of a slide or maybe a little demo project or whatever to show off this cool thing that you've done. And the same goes for if you work for a company that is maybe a software forward company or SaaS or something like that, there's probably a company blog and they're probably dying to have more content, especially when it's kind of a technical nature, whether it's, demos of your products or whether it's some cool integration features that have just come out, or maybe it's just updates on the product itself and that users might not know about. See if you can write something for them. Because not only does that give you great visibility outside of your company because people come to the blog, they read it, they see that you're one of the contributors to it, but it also gives you great visibility inside because now you're not just a developer, you're also a content writer and maybe you can make a video that goes with it or you can make a project demo or, it broadens your skills, it broadens your visibility within the company and it shows that you're not just a single person who can only do this. You can also do these other things that are extremely valuable, usually to marketing organizations and social media content teams and, all these other interconnected pieces of the organization.
So folks, I'm here with JD from Raygun. JD, you guys get like 1 billion errors a month. What are some of the more interesting errors that you've seen over the years?
Oh, that's a good question. We certainly deal with a lot of errors. A couple of things come to mind. When we very first launched and we kind of expected, we'd see some people sign up and try it. We actually got one of the top 10 Facebook games. Remember when they were huge? Mm-hmm. And so one of the top 10 Facebook games, and it was, between us, one of the most buggy bits of software I've ever seen. And so it managed to completely blow us off the internet in like our first week of launching. So we solved that.
That's why I couldn't win at poker.
Those Farmville animals, no.
Yeah.
And there was another one always sticks in my mind because obviously we track JavaScript, and just like with mobile error crash reporting, you can't access the end user's browser console to see errors. So you really want to track that and report it. Right. And I remember this one customer, and they had this really fancy animation on the cursor on their website. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, their JavaScript to do that, they deployed a bug with it, which meant that on every single mouse move event of every single customer they had would send an error report to Raygun. So, working at Raygun is like dealing with a constant distributed denial of service attack and doing it with style.
So if you want to know what kinds of interesting things are going on that you're not seeing in your app, you have to check out Raygun. They're doing a free trial right now. You can get it at raygun.com.
Yeah, I remember. So back when I worked for a hosting company, they actually sponsored me to go to an event that I got accepted to speak at, and they supported me in everything as long as they wanted the company's logo on the slides and they wanted me to link to the jobs page. So lots of times, you'd be surprised. It never hurts to ask. You can get some support from even companies you might not expect, because there's also something in it for them. Because if you're speaking outside of your company, well, you're helping with name recognition of the company. Lots of times companies want to be seen as they're on the cutting edge. They're the types of companies that send people to events and can attract other people to come work there. So you never know. Even if you're at a place where that's not the norm, it never hurts to talk to your management and see what you can make happen, because you might be surprised.
I was talking to a guy at Facebook a while back, and he was DevRel at Facebook. And it was mostly about his impact, the metrics that he was judged on are mainly about recruiting, right? How can we get our name out there so we can get the best of the best into Facebook? And React was essentially like a recruiting tool to a certain degree, right? They didn't have to do that, but it was a great way to get their name out there and make sure that people aspirationally wanted to work at Facebook. So yeah, definitely. There's a huge vested interest for companies on the recruiting side.
Yeah, hiring software developers right now is big business. And so if you can get any sort of edge, lots of times you'll take it anyway you can get it.
It's an extremely competitive market for React engineers out there, for sure.
So, Jack, I'd asked Paige about writing. One thing we haven't talked on yet is the video side of things. And so I'll go to you for my advice there. So let's put yourself in the shoes of someone that's got a little bit of an interest in creating videos and YouTube. What would you sort of recommend as first steps there?
When you talk there about doing brown bags internally, that's actually how I got started most recently on getting into YouTube. I was giving brown bags to Nike on all kinds of stuff. I did an IoT brown bag, actually. We had the entire table of like little plug and play IoT devices, and everybody learned how to write C. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I could do this on YouTube and get more audience. And that's what I did. But I got to say, I made every possible mistake when it came to YouTube. I didn't do thumbnails. I didn't do good descriptions. I didn't do SEO. I didn't figure out what people were looking for as opposed to what I wanted to put out there. That's a huge thing. Like, there are tools that will tell you what people are searching for and where the competition is high and the searching is not there, or where the competition is low, but a lot of people are searching for it, which is where you want to be. It is a tough thing to do, I got to tell you. So here's just having now gone through all that and building up this channel. I can tell you, one, content is king. The Disney Pixar thing is true, right? People are there for the content, right? So make sure that that's number one, and it's on point, right? You want to build a video that people care about, search for and find. And then the second thing, weirdly, is audio quality, because most people are going to be listening to it and then having it in the background. They don't, besides like watching you maybe code, they don't really care about the quality of your camera or the lenses or the optics or the lighting and all that sort of stuff. They don't care, whatever. But the audio, it is like, you're talking to like a Burger King, like they're going to be like, oh no, I can't do that. Or if you're like in a cafe and you can hear people in the background like, orders up, you're like, no, please don't. Like, I was looking at this like new application, and I won't mention the name because I don't want the guy to feel bad, but like, they had the homepage, a YouTube link on it to their like promo video for it. And I was like, the sound quality is so bad. Like, why did you put that on the page? Anyway, so little things like that. So content is king, audio is second, and don't worry about the video and all that. I will say, in terms of effort for a reward, though, I would go with Paige's advice. Just write it. It's like 100 times easier to just write it as opposed to record it and show it. Because when you record it, I don't care how many times you've done it, but your fingers won't work on the keyboard if you hit the record button. It's like you go into spasmodic mode and like you're mistyping everything. You're like, oh my God, no. And then you can't remember anything. You're like, what's my name? I don't even know what my name is. And it's just a mess. And none of that happens when you're writing. You just write. You just write. And as TJ says, all they care about is code blocks anyway. So just give the people what they want. Don't worry about the flowery writing. And then, if you really want to get into it, I think YouTube is cool. There are other things as well. I think there's also you can also, like, if you really care about that, there's screencast companies that you can get connected with who will help you do a screencast. You've done one, I've done one. Mm-hmm. And again, they'll help you do all that. And they'll actually give you editing resources as well. Although I think for Paige, you did the editing yourself, didn't you?
I did. It was very manual, and I will never do that again.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I learned a lesson.
It's funny.
I finally got editing down after all this time, but it is, yeah.
What's funny, your note about audio quality, because I totally do that. Like if I'm watching a video and the audio comes in kind of crappy, it's like my brain instantly doesn't trust the video.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, it's like,
Right?
it's like, oh, this isn't, it's like, oh, it's almost subconscious where you sort of think, oh, well, this isn't an authoritative source, right? If it's choppy audio, that means it wasn't like professionally produced or anything. And it's amazing how much that can just get you to instantly shut down a video.
Yeah.
So let me ask you two a question, because I've done a few and I don't particularly enjoy it. But what do you think is your take on doing conference talks? Because for me, it's a lot of work. And I am so relieved after it's done. And I don't particularly like putting together slide decks. So if there's some other way that I can put content out there, whether it's writing or videos or pretty much anything besides giving live talks, I will try and do that first. But I'd love to hear, what are your take on it? Because it's something that a lot of people talk about. They're like, oh, just go speak at a meetup, or just, you wrote this great article. Why don't you turn it into a talk? And it's just like, I don't want to. That is so much effort.
Well, work.
Yeah, just go read the article. You'll probably get more out of it. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that some people do the circuit even, and we'll take one talk on the road and just go talk at a whole bunch of conferences, which is really smart if you've got something like that.
Oh,
that's, very broad reaching, I guess.
So the big fun thing, we'll get into the fun stuff first, and then we'll deal with like the messy stuff first. But the fun thing of giving conference talks is you get to go somewhere and there are other people there, other people that are people you probably find interesting, right? It's another software developer meetup. And if you're a speaker, you tend to have more interactions with other speakers than you would if you're just attending a conference, because
you get access to the green room.
Yeah, you can hang out backstage and
get some swag.
Get some like special swag. So that's one of the big appeals of doing it, right? You get life stories out of it. I've been to some cool places and given some cool talks, things I'll never forget. And so, yes, it is a lot of work to put these things together, especially like I've always had the opinion, if you're going to do something like a conference talk, you should do it and do it well. Right? And lots of times something that you see somebody present on stage that takes 30 minutes could take weeks or months. Lots of time, the research behind it. Some of the good ones, I mean, there can be years invested into the background knowledge to make some of these things happen. But I don't know. It's an art. It's kind of like what we've discussed before. Like as we go through these different mediums, it's something I feel like you've got to be somewhat interested. Some people are paranoid of speaking in public. It's its own skill in and of itself, and it's like any other skill. It's something you have to do to get better at. I think there are certainly people that are more natural at it than others, especially if you've had some experience doing this at school or work. It'll definitely help. But anybody can learn to do it. You just have to do it. And doing like brown bags or local meetups or whatever can be a great place to kick the tires, try it out before you start maybe submitting to some more prestigious type events and stuff like that. And also, like if you're looking to get into some of these better events, doing all these things that we've talked about throughout this podcast so far is a great way to get your name eligible, I guess, for some of these things. Because as someone that's organized conferences before, if I get a conference submission, the first thing I'm going to do is Google you and see if you're an expert on like if you can have proven record that you're an expert on a topic. Because as an organizer, I don't want to bring in somebody that I can't trust. People are paying money to come to my event, right? I want proof that you can do this and do this well. And so having evidence out there, whether it's YouTube videos or writing or anything of the like, will help convince me that it's worth inviting you out to my event in some exotic location. I don't know. That was a bit of rambling. I don't know if that helped at all.
Yeah, I think if you want to get invited, having a lengthy history of talking about one particular topic. I know I worked with Zach Jackson on Module Federation stuff, and now he gets invited to talk places because he is singularly focused. All of his content is around Module Federation. And so he gets just known for that. And so when conference presenters think, oh, I'm getting interest in Module Federation as a thing to do, they find him like number one. And yeah, that's the person, you're going to bring in. There you go. And as a presenter, it really helps when you are really deeply knowledgeable about the topic. Like that little IoT talk that I gave at Nike, I was dreading the conversations after that, because he would ask, I was, oh man, are people going to ask me about stuff that I don't know about? Because I only barely scratched the surface with this. I've done a few projects of my own. Blah, blah, blah. Of course, nobody ever does, by the way. All those fears are unfounded. Nobody, you could have the worst presentation in the world. I've seen folks go up literally to the microphone with, honest to God, 3x5 cards and just look down and just literally just read the cards. Yeah, and I walked out because I'm like, okay, whatever. But no, I was one of the very few people that walked out, and it wasn't like it was a hate walk. I was just like, I can't. I'm sure the content was great, but whatever. But yeah, nobody. I'm sure nobody said to him later, oh, that was probably a bad thing to do. People are very, very not critical of these things. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk about what you're going to be far more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, and I guess one thing to consider if you're looking to get into this and stand out and be, stand apart from your peers is how much time do you have to invest in this kind of activity? Because a conference talk is most likely going to require a whole lot more preparation and research and building demos and hours of just walking through everything so you feel confident about what the slides are versus a weekend where you learned something cool at work and you just want to bang out a 5-minute think piece on it and show people how you did it.
Yeah.
So if you've got kids or parents or pets or just a really busy life for whatever reason, also keep that in mind and how much time you can actually put towards these things. Because I know plenty of people who have the best of intentions and get started and they're really jazzed about it at the beginning and they turn out a bunch of stuff and then they fall into a black hole and it's been 3 years since they wrote anything. And so you go to their website and you find their name and you see these 5 things. And then you see also that it was back in 2015 and they've never resurfaced again. So find something that is sustainable, I guess.
Yeah.
Which for me, it's writing. For Jack, it's videos. Just figure out what your thing is and what you can reasonably do. Because when I started writing, I wrote 2 pieces I wrote an article once every couple weeks. And then after about 3 years of doing that, I decided that once a month was a better cadence for me because I had plenty of other stuff going on at that point. So just, try to be consistent with it, but also don't be like, I'm going to do this every 3 days and I'm going to release every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And because you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment in that regard. Be realistic about it too.
Yeah. And to bring full circle too, because I mentioned this kind of at the start, my number one tip for speaking, if you're preparing for a talk or whatever, is to be energetic about whatever you're doing or being enthusiastic about what you do, because that energy is palpable. People can tell. You don't want a speaker on stage that doesn't appear confident about what they're presenting or doesn't appear knowledgeable about what they're presenting. You want someone up there that is excited to be there, wants you to be excited to be there, and wants to excitedly share something that they've done or that they've learned about. And the best way to be energetic and enthusiastic about something is to be genuinely energetic and enthusiastic, aka it should be something that you really do find interesting and that you really do want to share. You don't want to have to fake that authenticity. You want it to be real because that comes across. And so if you don't have a topic that you feel that passionate about, maybe wait until you do, until your moment comes and you have something that really strikes your interest and something really interesting and you feel can add some value and put out there, because you'll just do a better job. You'll have more fun. You'll do a better job. You'll be happier with the experience as well.
This is kind of why I'm a little bit hesitant about the DevRel track, because if you're DevRel for a company, then you always have to be excited about what they're doing, even if you're really not excited about what they're doing. And not everything that every company that I've been at is interesting to me. Whereas
Jack, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Everything I've ever presented, I've been entirely enthusiastic about. At Progress and Blues, we've only done amazing things. We've been flawless.
There's no such thing.
Sure. Yeah. Right. But I at least get to pick my own topics, even though sometimes I pick topics that are really boring to me.
It's definitely a concern in DevRel, and it's the sort of thing you want to make sure to pick something that you do find interesting. I'm not going to lie and say like there's never been something I've had to do that hasn't been something I find interesting, right? Just like any other job, you're going to be put on tasks you don't want to do. It's just sort of the nature of getting paid and, not controlling everything in the work yourself. But you can put yourself in a position like hopefully you would take a job for at least a greater technology that you find interesting. So that at least you're broadly excited, even if certain things you're required to do on the day in, day out might not be 100% what you would choose to do.
Let's do an hour on enough shifting.
Yeah. Hopefully that was a good enough political answer in case my employer or previous employers are listening in.
I think it's a cool role, though. Got to do that.
Yeah.
Always consider DevRel something maybe I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not to take this too far off topic, but the nice thing about the DevRel role for just the broader purpose of this conversation is most everything you do is in public, which certainly helps with things like resume building and that bit, because unlike your work's not behind closed walls, it's sort of by design out there for people to view and to check out, which can be advantageous.
Well, and if that's the kind of, if that's the kind of role that you want to get into or you think you do, all the stuff that we just talked about is a perfect example to a potential customer, or potential client or employer that you would be great at it. You have all these things to point to that say, I'm good at communicating, I'm good at building demos, I'm good at speaking to groups of people. All of this is exactly what a lot of DevRel is about.
Indeed.
It's also one of the ways that we source folks for this show. Actually, come think of it, just kind of go meta on it. Like, oftentimes it's, hey, what did you do? What do you do? And it's like, oh, I wrote an article on Medium about how to do like, I don't know, parallax scrolling or something, I'm like, cool.
Yeah, we're not reaching out to random people that work at Quicken Loans and I don't know. Sorry. There's like 3 people on this cool listening to this that like this really struck a tone with them, but we're not reaching out to random companies and just saying, who are your random software engineers working at your apps? Like usually it's somebody wrote something interesting and we think it would be fun to chat with them about it. So
yeah. And you realize as you get into this kind of space, whether it's tech Twitter or content creation or whatever, that it's actually a pretty small community. You'll see the same people coming up over and over again because they're putting out good content or they're writing regularly or they're doing talks. So you'll start to get to notice who the players are. And it's pretty cool when you have gained enough of a following that people will start tagging you as one of those people that they like to turn to for good content or good videos or whatever. It doesn't take, I don't think, a massive amount of effort. It just takes consistency.
Yeah.
Continuing to put out good stuff on whatever cadence makes sense for you. And just being there and showing up and doing it again and again is, after a while, it will start to pay off in some way.
I'm always hoping to break into somebody's top 10 YouTubers that they watch. And it's always the same folks. Like every time that they leave a list, it's always like Traversy, Recode Jam.
The other thing too, and I guess this can be our last tip, my last tip at least, is that you don't even have to be a particularly great software engineer to be good at this sort of stuff as well. Lots of times too, if you're the type of person that struggles to learn new technology, that can actually make you counterintuitively a great person to write content about it, because you can experience the pain of learning something and can help convey that to others. So if you don't feel like you're the top 1% engineer or whatever, don't let that stop you either.
No, not at all. Because you have that great perspective of someone who's just learning something, and you don't have that curse of knowledge where you don't understand like the steps that it takes to get there.
So with that, do we have any other tips for people that we haven't touched on before we move into picks?
Countless, but I think we should jump into picks.
Yeah. We can make this a 6-parter. We can keep going.
Right?
Yeah. You can always hit us up on our Discord channel or Twitter and tell us how do you stand out from the group?
Yeah. Cool. Well, with that, why don't we move into picks? And Jack, do you want to kick us off today?
Sure.
Hi, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And lately I've been coaching some people on starting some podcasts and in some cases just taking their career to the next level. Whether you're beginner going to intermediate going to advanced, whether you're trying to get noticed in the community or go freelance, I've been helping these folks figure out how to get in front of people, how to build relationships, and how to build their careers and max out and just go to the next level. So if you're interested in talking to me and having me help you go to the next level, go to topenddevs.com/coaching. I will give you a 1-hour free session where we can figure out what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, and figure out what the next steps are. And then from there, we can figure out how to get you to the place you want to go. So once again, that's topenddevs.com/coaching.
So I'm not sure if I have mentioned this already. Maybe I have, but I'll do it again because it's cool and I've found a fresh perspective on it. And that's there's a new application, terminal application. It's only for OS X. I apologize for that, but it's called Warp. And it's a Rust-based terminal. It's considered, they call it like the next generation terminal, whatever. It actually is really cool. Like, I'm genuinely, like, as a person who's used a terminal before GUIs, right? I think this is an awesome terminal. But if you're the kind of person who is intimidated by the CLI and is like, I don't even know what it is, it's just like a third language I got to learn, this whole Unix command line, ugh. You're like, but I have to learn it because I need to do like, CI/CD or automation or things like that. They have some really cool features in here. One of them in particular is an AI feature where you can literally say, hey, how do I find and delete all of the DS store files in this directory, right? Whatever. You hit return on it and it gives you back, find dot, name, DS store. It writes it for you.
Nice.
Right. And that is so cool. And then, yeah, right. And then if you put that on the command line and you do like dash and then tab, it'll actually bring up like, oh, well, here are all the other parameters. And it'll give you documentation for each one. Like, this is the one that does it recursively. This is the one that does it this. And you're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. So in fact, I got to tell you, like, I use that AI thing. It gave me a better pattern. I had been like taking find and typing it through Xargs. It was just like, no, there's a dash delete option. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Hey, neat. So like, I hadn't seen that. I'm sure it came in at some point. I just didn't know. And there you go. So anyway, Warp.dev, cool stuff. And it's free. I like that.
Their tagline and their website, I like a lot. It's writing code in your terminal shouldn't feel like 1978. Which is pretty good.
That's pretty good.
1978 was a good year, but not the greatest for terminal.
I'm definitely going to download this. This looks awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Hey, I got some sci-fi themes. I made some sci-fi themes for it. If you're into Blade Runner or any of that stuff, because their themes are cool. They've got like nice kind of, but I like sci-fi stuff. So I have like a Dune theme, things like that. I'll put that.
Nice.
Paige, do you want to give your picks?
Sure. So my pick is also going to be a browser extension. And now I think it just came out as a Mac App Store app as well. And it's called Honey. And what Honey does is you install it on your Chrome browser or Safari or whatever. And whenever you're on a site where you're in the checkout process, whether it's Amazon or any site that has some sort of an e-commerce part to it, Honey will look around on the internet for discount codes and will automatically try and apply them to whatever site you're on, or it will show you, this is what I found. Do you want to add this to your checkout? So it's super nice in that regard. And you can also say, Honey, I want to watch this thing and see if the price goes down, because it will also just track the price of products over time to see if you're getting a good deal or if it's up from what it would normally cost. So it's pretty cool. I've used it a lot for Amazon. There's almost always some kind of a promo code that it can find, whether it's, bonus points or discounts or this other seller is selling it for less or something like that. So it just came out with a mobile extension. So if you put it on your Apple phone or your iPad or something, it can also do the same thing now. So it's pretty cool. So I would say if you are interested in finding codes without having to actually do the digging, you should give Honey a try.
Cool. And my pick is going to be Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie I just saw.
Nice.
And I think I picked the first one a little while ago. So I saw the second one. It's quite good. I think the first time I picked it, I recommended it. Basically, if you have kids or if you're nostalgic about the original games, those are the two groups that I think would like it. And since I fall into both of those camps, it was a blast. They did a good job with just little Easter eggs here and there, like callbacks to the original games and stuff. So it was just a lot of fun, pretty well made kids movie. So if that sort of thing appeals to you, I definitely would recommend checking it out.
I don't want to age you, but are you at the level where you played the original game and you had to leave it on overnight because you couldn't finish it all in one day, but there were no saves? So you literally had to okay.
I did. The Sonic games weren't so long but I do remember the technique because my parent, as a kid, you'd have to go somewhere and your game was stuck in that state. Yeah. So the trick was always right. You just turn the TV off, right?
Yeah.
Genesis will keep running, but the parents won't know if you just turn the TV off that it's still on. So you won't lose your step. Yeah, I actually have.
There's a farm cycle, so you got to go through. There's levels that you could die once, but you get 3 extra lives along the way. So you'd farm it for another two. So by the time you get to the end, you'd have 100 lives.
Yep. No, I've always been a big fan of. I've actually got, and our listeners can't hear this, but in my background, I've got a Sonic Tails and Knuckles that I actually had from when I was a kid that I've kept around.
Nice.
That I've kept around up there. So I'm kind of like a mega fan from back in the day. So
that's awesome.
Well, cool. So yeah, thanks everybody again for joining us. I had a lot of fun chatting as always.
As always. It's a highlight of my week every week.
Absolutely. It's a great time.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody. And until next week.
See you then.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.